right, welcome back to On Texas Football. I hope everybody's having a great Wednesday night. Welcome to the Wednesday night live stream here at On Texas Football. I'm Jeff Howe, joined by lifetime Longhorn and 2005 national champion Marcus Myers. Marcus, how are you tonight?
I'm doing well, sir. How are you?
I am terrific. And the third member of our team tonight is my colleague, as Rod Babers has dubbed him, the young prodigy here at On Texas Football, CJ Vogel. CJ, how's your Wednesday treating you, sir?
Hey, it's another day in the off season, fellas. So a lot to talk about. Some news going around. Of course, coaches are on the road again. Jerry's on the road. I'll be on the road tomorrow. So we'll have plenty of recruiting coverage for you for the rest of the week.
Hey, do you have the have a day hat? Is that handy? Like, I think anytime like a commit happens or something, I think the have a day hat needs to be a part of the rotation. That's just me, though.
It's buried in my closet somewhere. I don't know. I'm still unpacking some stuff. I haven't quite gotten to it, but I'll find it. I'll find it, Jeff.
All right. CJ will get on that. We'll get on with the live stream. Questions, comments, you want to air some grievances, whatever you got, line it up in the chat. We'll take it. Super chats, as always, jump to the front of the line. Big thank you to Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise, our lead sponsor tonight. We'll tell you more about our sponsors throughout the show as well. CB, what's going on? Good to see Jay Dobbs, everybody in the chat. Hope everybody's having a great Wednesday. CJ, I want to start with an article you authored over at ontexasfootball.com with a simple question. Who is your short yardage back in 2026? And you and I actually started talking about this last night because we got a question about the offensive line and my definition of up to snuff or up to par, and we kind of went down the rabbit hole with that. What you broke down the numbers in short yardage situations, and Marcus, I want to get your reaction to this. I don't know if you've seen CJ's piece yet, but CJ, what did you? I know you've crunched short yardage numbers throughout the offseason. What were you expecting to find? What did you learn? Anything surprising? Walk me through the process of putting this together.
Yeah, I know that we talked about this a little bit last night, Jeff, and so it made me wonder, because we looked at it from a 2025 lens of which Texas running backs had success, which guys did you hand the rock to, and they just didn't get the job done, right? And so when we had the conversation last night of, well, the Texas offensive line should take a step forward, and the Texas running back room should have more talent given that 2 first-team all-conference running backs are joining that room in 2026. It lends to think that, okay, that room, that area of short-distance success should increase, right? I mean, again, we go back to last night. That 2 + 2 should equal 4, and Texas should have more success in goal-to-go situations or areas where you need to move the chains on 2nd, 3rd, and 4th downs where you need 3 yards or less. And so I had already crunched some of the numbers for the running backs a year ago. I included Arch Manning, who, as we know, his legs became more and more of a threat as the season continued. But then I wanted to include Raleigh Brown. I wanted to include Hollywood Smothers. These are 2 guys Texas added. Again, very talented. I was shocked to see some of the numbers from Raleigh Brown. I was shocked. There was a guy who converted 22 of his 27 attempts. I went through every single game for Arizona State a year ago. He had 27 attempts on needing 1 yard, 2 yards, or 3 yards to either move the chains to convert a first down or get into the end zone for a touchdown. Only one time in those 27 attempts did he lose yardage. I was shocked. Yeah. 7 of those 27 attempts went for 10 or more yards. So this is a guy that has wiggle. He's tough, great contact balance. And right now I'm thinking this is going to be the guy that, though not very big, is probably someone Texas looks to very often, given what I just mentioned in those short distance abilities to move the chains or punch it into the end zone early in the year.
Marcus, when you look at this chart CJ has put together, what jumps out to you? I'm with CJ. The Raleigh Brown numbers, I know that at Arizona State, he had more gap power runs than zone runs, according to Pro Football Focus, if you look at the breakdown. And I think he was probably better than you expected him to be in short yardage situations. I just didn't know it was this effective when you're talking about 3 yards or less, Marcus. That is point-blank range, needing to get it done kind of football.
Yeah, I mean, before I saw this, when CJ had first posted it on the site, I, my initial thought was it was going to be Smothers, just from more of the body type. But to your point, Jeff, and to CJ's research, like one, I mean, the mere fact that he converted at such a high clip is impressive. Let alone that he had 27 attempts at it. Right. I'm not overly shocked at the Texas numbers because that was kind of what the eye test told you. And then in a lot of instances, they weren't, the most opportune, or maybe the body types or builds to, necessarily be the ones that you would want to handle those types of short yardage. But yeah, I'm completely swayed. Like I would have to go with Raleigh Brown as who I would say would be the clubhouse leader. And then the further you get into the season, I suspect they incorporate Derek Cooper more and more. As impressive as he's been, I have a hard time believing just out the gate, on the very first short yardage opportunity, especially when you fast forward to week 2, you're playing against Ohio State, the first short yardage opportunity there that you're going to, put a true freshman in, to handle that. So I think they'll incorporate him more over time, but that certainly is impressive for Raleigh Brown. Some guys just have a nose for it. I think, and certainly, having not watched all the clips that you had a chance to watch, CJ, I imagine, he's one of those guys. And it also tells you like they didn't even have anybody else on their squad that they trusted to even remotely take any of the carries from him. So as explosive as he is, in different facets of the run and pass game, that's certainly very impressive and comforting to see that he's had that much success in short yardage.
Am I crazy for thinking this in short yardage? I want Arch Manning, and I believe Arch Manning is still going to be your most effective short yardage weapon. Mm-hmm. I don't want him anywhere near leading your team in rushing attempts with 3 or fewer yards to go this year. Yeah, those are. I'll borrow the Brian Harsin term. Those are silver bullets. You need to save them for when you really need them. Like CJ, I've said it before. I'll say it again. I don't need Arch with like 6 of those against Texas State or 5 to 8 of those against UTSA. You want to do that against Ohio State to win the game? Great. You need to do that against A&M or an SEC title game to win it? Great. But I got to, if I'm Sark, I got to preserve the number of point blank range shots I'm going to let my quarterback take.
Yeah, it's almost like you want to go back to what happened in 2024 with Quinn Ewers kind of being your quarterback, and then situationally you would bring in Arch Manning, right? And that's when you would see his legs become a piece of this offense. Last year, and I think the Mississippi State game is the best example, because he was so prone to getting hit, because he was just pressured all over the place. That one extra hit, whether it's with his legs, in the pocket, just making any type of football play, you never know when a tough hit could come. A head hits the ground a little bit harder, or he gets sandwiched, and you sit there and say, okay, that was an unnecessary shot that we didn't need him to take. But because of his ability to extend plays, create, and extend, you sit there and say, well, you can't tell him no, but you'd like to limit the opportunities for that to happen. So, Jeff, I'm with you. And I think what's going to be really interesting with all of this is how do you become – if you're Sark, how do you not show tendency, right? Because I don't think anything of those numbers show you that Hollywood Smothers is going to be a guy that Texas relies on at least a lot, right? Maybe they do, but it was pretty obvious that the numbers didn't favor that. 7 of his 12 attempts actually went for 1 yard or less. So this was not a guy who powered through or, moved the pile by just turning his legs when it got muddy. So when it gets into those situations, is it just as simple as, hey, it's Hollywood or it's Raleigh Brown or Derek Cooper, or how do you show different tendencies given the personnel in the room, knowing, okay, also you have an Arch Manning for those special instances or big games?
Yeah. Marcus, what I'm asking for in terms of short yards, and I think this applies to red zone too, I need the happy medium to what Sark has been at times where you're so abstract. It's like an amoeba. You're so abstract. You lack organization, and at times there's no identity, and it just seems like you're kind of grab bagging at times. I need the happy medium between that and like Tom Herman's red zone identity, where you're telegraphing it. Like Sam Ehlinger's getting the ball at quarterback power. You're probably not going to do anything off of it. That's the dance with the one who brung you, and they did that at times. The offense is detriment. So Marcus, I just need this Texas short yardage game to be the happy medium between those two deals.
Yeah, I think that's fair, Jeff. And even, to your question, CJ, on tendency, like I think one of the things that, now I'm really trying to kind of mull on it a little even more is, I wonder how fair some of those numbers are to Smothers. Now, granted, you were able to watch all of this and chart it, but he certainly had less talent around him than Raleigh Brown did. And so do we attribute some of his lack of success rate, if you will, to, just not having a great offensive unit that would really dictate any attention going anywhere but him. And then the hope would also be that, someone like a Jabbar Jaloot can help these running backs begin to kind of elevate their game at large. And then, again, just the talent that is going to be around these guys. So, maybe he isn't, hitting that 80% clip, but maybe from time to time, you're still able to use Smothers. And it's closer to, 70, 75% in the instances that you're using them. And, if they're finding ways to do this, maybe out of 21 or at least some form of a two-back personnel, then, Sark can get not necessarily cute, but at least the defense is having to, kind of plan for both backs. So I think maybe that's a way I think that's maybe one of the ways he goes about it is that creativity doesn't necessarily have to be sleight of hand or trick plays, but, you're just putting two guys back there that they have to account for. And then, you're determining which guy you're going with at any given time.
Yeah. The one thing I thought, and you mentioned that there, what kind of talent were you working with up front, right? Arizona State, Max Iheanacho was drafted 21st overall by the Steelers, right? He was playing right tackle for it. Josh Adkins was just a big time portal addition by Missouri. So Arizona State, at least, from what I watched and the big names that we're talking about, more talented up front. It's also going to be interesting because I want to go back. I noticed a pretty consistent trend all the way throughout, and I wish I took note today as I was watching back some of these games and going through some of the box scores. The amount of times that NC State just said, "Hey, it's 1st and 10. We're going to give the ball to Hollywood Smothers, and he's going to make it 2nd and reasonable, or 2nd and short, or or just move the chains for us." It was amazing how many times I would just see a drive or a quarter's worth of work where it'd be 1st and 10, run for 9, 1st and 10, run for 22, 1st and 10, run for 5. And I'm sitting there saying, okay, that was their offense. The first down was just give the ball to Hollywood Smothers, and he'd figure out he would dictate what's to come on 2nd and 3rd down for you, but he would have a lot of success doing so. And so my next point I wanted to get to, and this is what I'll write about later this week, when you get into that kind of first down situation and teams can't just sit there and pack the box because you got a Cam Coleman, a Ryan Wingo, and an Emmett Mosley, that 11 personnel is so much more threatening because teams can't keep that extra defender in the box. Yep. And if they do, well, good luck, because now you're playing 3-on-4 basically, or 4-on-3 with those 3 big-time wide receivers that I just mentioned. So if that's how things end up shaking out for Texas, where it's Hollywood Smothers on first down and then Raleigh Brown coming in either in 2nd or 3rd or whatever the situation is, that is so many different opportunities for Sark to get creative and to get deep into his bag the way that we've seen. And I'm sure y'all saw the clip. Gosh, I wish I remembered who said it, but
it's a coach Dan Casey. Yeah.
Dan Casey, yes, said no one steals more from Steve Sarkisian than any other coordinator in the entire country, right? He is the guy that gets picked off the most with his play calls, designs, creativity. That's where he can really get creative, is when, okay, teams can't just, predict consistently what's to come. And they got plenty of talent to make sure that it's a mystery bag every single snap if they wanted to.
CJ, I don't know if you got this deep into it, but I would imagine too, with the Hollywood Smothers numbers, I would imagine CJ Bailey had a decent number of attempts for NC State on 3 yards to go or less. Because, I mean, if you got a 6'6", 210-pound quarterback, you're probably thinking, hey, this quarterback sneaking, he'll lean forward and get you a couple yards.
All forward.
Yeah, exactly. So, just something to think about when you think about the Hollywood Smothers numbers. No, good stuff.
You just created yourself another GIF. Matthew's going to clip that one up.
Good.
I would expect nothing less from Matthew, always looking for those good opportunities to get some CJ content. All right. We'll pick it back up on the other side. We got to talk some recruiting. But before we do that, let's thank our lead sponsor for the Wednesday night live stream here at On Texas Football, and give a shout out to Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise. If you're stuck in that corporate rat race with 2 weeks PTO and no control over the money you can make or your schedule in general, give Andy a call. He'll take you through a process to help you find a business that'll fit your skill sets and your financial goals. Franchise ownership is something that's not for everyone, but if you have a desire to take control of your destiny, call Andy or email him at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. Again, that's andy@myperfectfranchise.net. And we want to thank Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise for sponsoring the Wednesday night live stream here at On Texas Football. All right, CJ, you want to just give us a couple of recruiting news notes and nuggets? Coaches are on the road. A lot of stuff's happening. Offers going out. The big one, though, we had there's a trending Texas piece up at ontexasfootball.com authored by Hank South. This came out a couple hours ago. Predictions, CJ, coming in for Brock Williams, Texas target Brock Williams. Texas has been on him a long time. This has been a recruitment they've been in on forever. Things starting to wind down here in the Brock Williams recruitment.
Yeah, I believe so. And look, he has a commitment date of May 15th. So it's about, a week and a couple days, only a couple more sleeps until he is making a decision. Myself, Hank South, and Jerry Hamilton all put in predictions for Texas. We believe this one is trending in the direction of Texas. And for folks who have been around on our live streams over the last couple of years, look, we talk recruiting, but I think that's going to ramp up here soon. I think you're going to start seeing more predictions being made, guys starting to trend a little bit more towards Texas on our streams. We're going to talk about it a little bit more. And I wanted to start with Brock Williams because, look, the Texas coaches are out on the road. Jeff Banks was in Wisconsin yesterday. He started in Indiana. He was in New Jersey seeing JT Girardi as well earlier today, the Texas tight end commit already in the class. But right now, I would be shocked if he didn't stop by Libertyville, Illinois one more time to see Brock Williams ahead of his commitment date on May 15th. Again, I think Texas is in a great position right now. He's been to campus 4 times in the last 8 months, starting with that Arkansas game on November 22nd a year ago. Made it back for the January 24th Junior Day, again in March, and once more for the last week of April spring practice. Texas in a good spot. We'll continue to have more for you at ontexasfootball.com. And, of course, our Jerry Hamilton is out on the road as well. He's back through Louisiana. He stopped by and saw Easton Royal, the 5-star wide receiver commit, earlier this afternoon.
Marcus, I ask you this as somebody who played at Texas on a team that won a national championship that was made up almost exclusively of guys from the state of Texas. Do you like Texas going national to recruit? Or at this point, are you just chalking it up to the game at this point?
I think you kind of have to chalk it up, right? In a perfect world, I would love there to be more Texans on the roster, homegrown. But even then, like if you just look at, where people have kind of migrated to over the last several years, and certainly since the pandemic, like in a lot of instances, it's people that have moved in, guys that have transferred, any number of things. And then just with, the explosion of college football, social media, it makes it so much easier to recruit nationally. And then even if you really, kind of dial it all the way back to my time in playing, I mean, none of these guys saw us play. So like they don't have a concept of, a truly like homegrown Texas, or for the most part, any major team. Because you see, pretty much all of the top, powers in the game right now are going all across the country to grab people, whether it's in the high school recruitment or, from the portal. So I think it's part of it. It's one of the things that no different than kind of our lifetime Longhorn and how do you evaluate one conversation. Like that's going to be a continued thing that we're going to see is just more national recruitments. I remember in one of the, interviews Sark did recently, he just kind of started talking about it. Hey, I'm always going to recruit California because I'm from there. We have a lot of footprint in Georgia and in Louisiana, so we're going to recruit from there. And so I think, they're going and identifying guys. And so when, CJ's talking about a guy like Brock Williams, you've made an impression upon him. And the visit that impressed me the most, I remember when we were kind of talking about it, amongst ourselves that weekend when it was, everything was about to freeze here in Austin. And I was over here like getting my stuff ready so I could be hunkered down. And he's flying into town to go to, and I think he went to the basketball game that day too. So it's like, there's certain guys that, I think like what they see in Austin. Austin's certainly an inviting place. And there's any number of selling points that, you can point to that, doesn't force you to solely recruit in state. Again, I would love, there to be more guys or even a focus on trying to keep certain guys in the state, but at times there's great options that are outside of it as well. So I think that's just the way the game has moved. So is it my overall preference? No, but I've kind of come to accept it is what it is because I see it across the country.
And CJ, kind of piggybacking on something Marcus mentioned there too, like the population boom in the different metro areas in the state of Texas. You got a lot of kids, they didn't grow up here. So it's not like it was even 10 years ago where, hey, if this is a kid from Dallas, it's either Texas or OU or Texas A&M. Like he's going to end up at one of those three schools. That's not the case anymore. And even you talk to recruits a lot more than I do, but even if I'm, working a recruiting event with you and Jerry, like I hear far more kids, to Marcus's point, say, yeah, I didn't really have a team growing up or didn't watch a ton of college football. Or they might mention a player. Very rarely do I hear a kid say, oh, yeah, I grew up loving Texas, or I was an LSU fan, or I loved USC or whoever. Like it's just a totally different landscape you're dealing with now compared to 5, 10, definitely 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, for a while, when the video game wasn't being produced, this is going to sound
what I was
crazy.
About to say. No, you're right.
When
the
video game wasn't being produced, you would hear recruits say all the time, it's like, oh yeah, I don't care to watch college football. Or, there's guys now. I remember specifically talking to Colton Simmons when he was coming up out of Duncanville, and you ask him, he's like, who's your favorite college football player? He goes, I don't really watch it. It's like, do you watch the NFL? He goes, sometimes. You're sitting there saying, really? It's like, dude, you're the best football player in the state of Texas. You're one of the top 10 in the entire country. Or you don't lock in on the weekends and just like absorb all of these games and players. And, these guys just say, nah, man, I mean, I'm good at the sport. I enjoy it. I love playing it. I have no desire to sit down like I do for 12 hours on Saturday and Sunday and sit there like a sponge and just absorb everything. But times have changed now. Now you get the video game. Now you get, the content is just thrown down your throat, basically, of NIL deals, of social media, of the video game returning. And in a way, it's almost unavoidable to the point where everybody knows who Arch Manning is, right? Everybody knows who Jeremiah Smith is. And, you look around the country, there are plenty of others. I think to an extent, Jordan Seaton now is in that conversation. But it's always been really interesting the way that it's evolved. Because I think at least whenever I was coming through college or high school in 2013 to 2016, I sat there with all of my buddies and we'd watch it every single day. And all of my buddies who ended up playing college football, we know exactly what was going on, right? And then, you fell out of tune with what was happening in the sphere, and college football, was still evolving, but you didn't have that access to playing the game without being a part of it. So that's always interesting. But I saw this comment earlier and I wanted to get to it real quick. Would Horns fans accept a natty, if the roster were made up of 100% players from Oklahoma? I hope that answer is 100% unanimous yes. It's a national championship. But it also led me to think as well, when Hurricane Katrina hit, right, and you had that flux of families from Louisiana move to Houston, right? Mm-hmm. Some would trickle up into East Texas. I even saw a couple up in DFW. But there was always that just influx of talent that you sat there and said, where are you from? They said, Louisiana. And you sit there and say, what? And that's why for a long time you'd see a lot of the top talent from Houston say, I'm going back to Louisiana, to LSU, right? Yeah. I have family out there. We grew up there. We go back for crawfish boils. We go out there for summer vacations. And I always sat there and I was like, that's kind of strange. And then it hit me. I was like, oh, yeah. Katrina had a lot of people displaced where there's a lot of talent. Louisiana, Rod Babers will tell you the stat all the time. The most NFL players per capita of any state in the country, you just don't have the population. So it's always interesting the waves in which recruiting go. And now I think you're starting to see folks come back to, okay, I'm in tune with everything because of, I can't ignore it anymore.
Yeah. Jeff, you might think this sounds a little crazy too, but like to CJ's point about the video games, man, like one of the reasons I fell in love with Michigan is like I remember like always hearing their fight song and playing with like Tim Biaka Batuka on a video game.
Yep.
Right. And so I had it in my head that for a while I thought I wanted to go to Michigan. Like I had the starter jacket, like the whole nine. And it was, I think when, to CJ's larger point is just we had so fewer options back then that like you kind of dialed in on like one or two things and you just deep dived on it. They have the whole world at their hands literally in a phone now. And so, a lot of their attention is diverted elsewhere and they just don't have some of those things that draw them to programs in the same way that we did once upon a time.
Marcus, I'll date us too in terms of age. Like we're the same age. I loved Michigan growing up because the first year I remember watching college football was the 91 season when Desmond Howard won the Heisman Trophy. Mm-hmm. And let's face it, I am a kid directly impacted by the Fab Five, any impact they had on basketball, on pop culture, everything else. So yeah, 100%. And it's weird. Like I can remember having friends. I got a few friends that they grew up Florida State starter jackets.
That was the other one.
Yeah. In the hall. Yeah. Like, so yeah, I 100% agree.
That was VY. VY was a Florida State fan growing up. In his head, he was going to be the next Charlie Ward.
Interesting. Thankfully, that didn't happen. And he for Texas. Man, I would say, Marcus, if Vince Young's recruitment played out the exact same way, like right now, it wouldn't have made sense because if you look at VY's final schools, it was like Texas, Arkansas, Southern Miss, and Miami. I think those were his finalists, right? There might have been one more in there, but it's like the Southern Miss thing was Brett Favre and Steve McNair from that part of the Mississippi, and Arkansas because Houston would let him play quarterback, and then Miami was Miami at that point. So definitely not a conventional list of finalists VY had. All right, we'll get back to it here in just a second. We got a couple super chats we need to get to. Do that on the other side, but let's thank another one of our sponsors here on the live stream and give a shout out to our friends at Rogue Shop. RogueShop.com is where you need to go. Rogue Shop is bringing real plant medicine back to its roots. Rogue Shop ships nationwide. Make sure you use the promo code ONTEXAS for a special discount. Rogue Shop has it all from oils and creams to flour and gummies. Again, that's RogueShop.com. Use the code ONTEXAS for a special discount. And we want to thank our friends at Rogue Shop and RogueShop.com for sponsoring the Wednesday night live stream here at On Texas Football. NIL and Rev Share says Peter Warwick in the NIL era would have raked it in. There's a lot of guys from the 90s and the early 2000s that would have just been multi-millionaires in the NIL era for sure. All right, guys, let's get to a couple of super chats. Silver Spurs Sicko, thank you as always for the contributions and the super chats. Says a 2014 playoff better give us an on-campus Red River shootout. I'd say to that gentleman, no, never, no.
Never that
game. If Texas and Oklahoma end up matched up in a playoff, Marcus, I want that thing played at the Cotton Bowl. I don't ever want that game to be on campus.
Yeah, I wouldn't be a fan of it either, but I think with the way that, they're describing all of it, depending on where you're seated or something, I think you get to pick where the venue would be. So, I mean, you would probably force it to be, at one of the home campuses just for the pure, like, true home field advantage. But I'm with you, Jeff. I never would want to see that either.
CJ, I don't know if you went to the Big 12 championship game when Texas and OU played in Arlington in 2018. I hated it. It felt sanitized. It felt it was everything. It was bizarro Texas OU. Everything that makes that game special wasn't there at the Death Star. I hated it.
Well, I think in large part it's playing games at AT&T Stadium that does that for me. I've seen a number of games. I've seen Texas A&M and Arkansas in 2016. I saw Oklahoma State, Florida State in 2014, I believe. I've been to a number of these games. Texas, Oklahoma State. What's that?
Texas, Nebraska.
Like
Big 12
I think you go on and on. I hate games at AT&T. I hate games at NFL stadiums, Jeff. You've heard this rant time and time again, but it would feel strange, having Texas and Oklahoma play anywhere but the Cotton Bowl. And I'm sure if they did meet, whoever was the higher seed would say, get this team or get this game at my home stadium. I was looking it up just now. Do y'all know the last time that these two teams played on a home campus was?
Oh, man. It was, gosh. I want to say it was maybe in the 40s during World War II, but it's got to be like 1908 or 19 teens, somewhere along there.
Yeah, so the last time they played in Austin, Texas was actually 1923. according to Winsipedia. Okay, so that's where I get all of my head-to-head stuff from. Texas won the 1923 matchup 26-14. That was in Austin, Texas. The year before, they ended up playing 1922. They played in Norman, Oklahoma. Texas won 32-7. So, look, that's 103 years ago was the last time that these two teams traveled down to Austin or went up to Norman. So keep that thing up in Dallas. And, if all goes well, and I hope that there's some cognizant decision-making from the committee or whichever direction that this thing goes, whenever you start seeing and hearing about how the NCAA baseball tournament is made and you say, okay, you can't have this team play this team in this region because of prior, games or series, or last year they went there, so they kind of break them up this way. I hope they sit there and say, hey, there's the idea that these two teams are going to be seated number 9 and number 23 or whatever, and they have to meet up against one another. All right, well, we're just going to bump this team up to 22 and then go play whoever the number 10 seeded.
Yeah.
That would be fantastic.
I need the committee to use some common sense there. And no, Matthew's wrong, everybody. 1922 was not Bobby's first time covering Texas. That was not the first year Bobby was on the beat. So just want to get that straight. And Marcus, real quick, Marcus, this is why you and I shouldn't do live streams, because I could go on tangents and rabbit holes forever. But to CJ's point, like in a couple of people are mentioning in the chat, like AT&T Stadium, NRG, I think even like the Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, it just there's no character to it. Like back in our day, again, and I've got some friends that did it. Man, if you played a playoff game at the old Texas Stadium in Irving, or you played a playoff game at the Astrodome, like there was something special about that. It just doesn't feel the same with these new kind of state-of-the-art, just clean, sanitized venues.
Yeah, I agree. They don't have like the personality that you're looking for, right? Like they do their best to, add some of the historical elements, in and around the stadium. But it just doesn't have, like that character to it that you kind of sense all of the different people that have played, and gone in and out of those locker rooms. Like there's kind of a mystique to them, if you will. You just don't get that with some of these nice, big like cathedrals, if you will. But they're, like you said, super sanitized, almost like, you're living in the future or something. So yeah, I'm with you. I've not really enjoyed any of them. Of them all, I do like Mercedes-Benz. Probably better than, AT&T and different places like that. So like I did really enjoy it. But, if this thing goes to 24, then we may not be having too many trips back there unless it's for an actual bowl game, because it sounds like the championship game may be going away.
Of the pro stadiums, I'm partial to the Superdome personally.
I like Superdome too.
And as a Cowboys fan, CJ, I think you can appreciate this. I went to the old Texas Stadium one time to cover it was an old high school football playoff triple header. Yeah, Marcus, to your point, like walking down that tunnel, like, man, Emmitt Smith walked down this tunnel.
Right.
Staubach walked down this tunnel. And yeah, you bet I went to that big old crown in the middle of the field and looked up at the hole in the roof when I had the opportunity. So yeah, it's totally different than these experiences. CJ, go ahead. I know you had something.
I just had a hot take about teams playing, and this is more neutral site, but like I know that, NFL stadiums, to me, it just loses the luster. It loses the magic of college football, where everything's about the pomp, the pageantry. You hear Steve Sarkisian talk about it seemingly every time Texas plays on the road. I hate any game that's neutral site outside of the Cotton Bowl because of how unique it is in Army-Navy. Hey, I think Florida-Georgia is probably the one folks will argue with the most because of the pomp, the pageantry that goes off outside of the game, right? The world's largest cocktail party. I think that game sucks. I don't know. I think that game sucks. And I think it's probably in large part because you look over the last 20 years, Florida was really good, Georgia was bad. And then it flipped. And then Georgia was really good and Florida was horrible. And I don't think it was until about this year where you had maybe 2 of the last 15 Georgia-Florida games where the final score was within 10 points. And so I always had this idea growing up that, this was cool. These two teams really like going out and playing in Jacksonville against one another, but the games never gave me any memories. There was never a significant moment outside of in 2009, maybe, I don't know, when Georgia ran out red uniforms and came back in black. Like that.
Okay.
I think that game sucks. I think it's one of the most overrated single game rivalries that you'll see in college football because there's just nothing memorable about it. And I think that all starts with the play on the field.
It's Red River Junior. Like to me, it tries to be Texas OU, but it doesn't come anywhere close. It's not even remotely the same. And I say that with all due respect to both those fan bases. Like Marcus, I don't know about you. Like the only time I remember the Florida Georgia game being relevant was there was a 2-year stretch. I think maybe 97, 98, where I think the stadium in Jacksonville, the new stadium was getting built or they were renovating or something. And they went to campus sites for 2 years. And I was like, all right, Georgia going to the swamp. Got some character. Florida's got to go to Athens one year. There's something there. It just, I don't know. Maybe it's just Jacksonville just doesn't do it. Like I said, and you played in that venue, Marcus, you played at the Cotton Bowl. Like, yeah, the Cotton Bowl might be a dump, but it's our dump. It's our dump with charm. It's like, hey, yeah, I can make fun of my brother, but you can't make fun of my brother. Like leave the Cotton Bowl alone. Like it's unique. The Cotton Bowl kind of reminds me. It's one of the few stadiums left to me that has the mystique like the old Orange Bowl used to have. Like now you play the Orange Bowl in the Dolphin Stadium. It doesn't feel the same as when that thing was played in the old Orange Bowl.
Was it Florida, Georgia, where I think Georgia scored and then had the whole team run on the field?
Yeah.
Like that's probably the only real memory I have of that game.
19 years ago, by the way.
Yeah, when I was growing up, that wasn't appointment viewing or anything, right? Now, granted, that may be a regional thing as well, but I remember, Miami, Florida State games, right? I remember different big matchups, between rivals that were outside of, the Texas and OU game or Texas and A&M type games. I don't really remember as a kid, anything Florida, Georgia related. So I'm not too mad at that hot take, CJ. I think you might stir up the SEC faithful, but I think if they were honest, that's pretty spot on.
Yeah, Florida, Georgia doesn't mean a whole lot to me. The one game that I want it to be relevant, I want it to be relevant so bad. And by relevant, I mean the winner that there's national championship implications on it. I want Florida State and Miami to be that important again. Because when I was a kid, that was one of those games you did not miss that. And there was a couple years in there where Texas OU was a 2:30 kickoff, but Miami and Florida State played the 11 a.m. game. That's just I got used to that. And I love that game. You're watching a ton of NFL talent. So I want that game to be relevant, but Florida State has to hold up their end of the deal. It'll probably be under a different head coach other than Mike Norvell, but I digress. We got a couple more super chats to get to. Got your questions, comments, whatever you got. Go ahead and line it up because we've got a few more things to get to. Right now, I want to take a little time out and thank another one of our sponsors and let everybody know that this On Texas Football live stream is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. I'm telling you, it's May. The weather's perfect. Everything's rolling. And if you're just casually watching games right now with nothing on them, you're doing it wrong. You're leaving way too much fun on the table because Prize Picks is where everything changes. Now, every possession, every at bat, every shot, every pitch, it all matters, and you're locked in from start to finish. You're not just watching anymore. You got a little juice on it, and yeah, there's a chance you can cash into. And the best part is it's easy. With Prize Picks, you don't need any deep dives or complicated nonsense. You're just picking more or less on player stats. Trust me, that is it. Points, rebounds, hits, strikeouts, whatever you're watching. Build your lineup, submit it, and you're good. It takes about 60 seconds to make a lineup. And what I love most about this time of year is you've got options all over the place. You've got basketball, baseball, golf, hockey. You can stick to one of those, or you can mix and match across multiple sports. Whatever's on, it all works. That's it. That's the play. You just trust your gut. You lock it in. Now, every single moment matters when you're talking about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is available in all 50 states, including right here in the great state of Texas. So if you haven't jumped on Prize Picks yet, now is the time. You download the Prize Picks app, use the code HMA, play $5, and they'll give you $50 in lineups instantly. Again, download the Prize Picks app, code HMA, 5, get you 50. It's that simple. And as always, play smart, play responsibly, play Prize Picks. All right, guys, let's get back to it. We got I think All Right Cubed has a super chat. Said it's that time of the year for the Doomers. Definitely not me. Thank you, All Right Q, for pointing that out. To complain about our recruiting ranking thoughts, we did finish a bit low last year. CJ, I'll ask you this. Does the fact that you've got so much roster churn with the portal now, I'm not going to say your class ranking is irrelevant, but does it have as much luster or meaning or weight behind it as maybe it did a couple of years ago?
I don't care anymore about recruiting ranking.
That's fair. Yeah.
I don't think it really matters. And I say that because, look, for as much as it doesn't feel like, your funds are not infinite, right? You have a set amount of funds to construct a roster for the upcoming year. And I put it almost in this way. Would you rather have landed Felix Ojo for a couple $1 million or a Cam Coleman? Right? I mean, like, if you're playing from the same money pool, would you rather go to a kid out of high school that's going to take a year or two to get on the field, and who knows if he ends up being the guy that you got based off of the rankings that he was recruited out of? Or would you rather go get an all-world wide receiver or Rasheem Biles or 2 all-conference running backs, right? I look at it like that because, look, recruiting is still important. You're still going to want to get your guys out from the high school ranks, develop them. But the days in which you sit there and you say, I have to get the number 1 class because that shows that we're recruiting and we're bringing in a lot of these, high upside guys, that's great. But those high upside guys are not going to be what wins you 10 or 12 football games or leads you to a national championship game 16 games in. What's going to be the reason for that is the guys that have been in college for 3 or 4 years that you attract out of the portal, that you retain out of the NFL draft, that you retain from the portal to begin with. So I don't really care where Texas ends up as long as you look at the guys in the class and you say, I see why they took them, right? They have that one trait. They have that one skill. They have something that I can really mold and mend into being a serviceable or plus football player for me after 2 or 3 years, as long as there's still funds ready to go for the portal.
Marcus, you were a part of a recruiting class that was number 1 in the country. The 02 class was the best in the country. Does that mean as much now as it did then?
Not at all. I'm like CJ. Like, basically, I would say probably after I finished playing, I didn't care about recruiting rankings because I think a big part of it is, to your point, Jeff, when you're inside one of them, but then you look at how it played out. Granted, a lot of us were able to contribute. The top end of that class did what they needed to do to help us bring a championship home. And probably half of that class, either, flunked out, got themselves in trouble, had injuries. And so for any number of reasons, like, didn't actually get to contribute to the level that you would have hoped they would have. And a lot of them didn't get a chance to contribute to our national championship. So, I like a lot of what our All Right Q posts. And so I'm guessing the last part of that was a little tongue in cheek around, we finished a tad low, but okay, cool. Even in that, you went and got like 2 of the top players out of Florida, if not, the top. You had the best player out of North Carolina. You had a guy in Richard Wesley that, everybody in the country was after. Jermaine Bishop Jr. Like, we can go on and on and on here. Like, I don't really care about what pundits, all due respect, to the guys that, make the full living off of that, where they decide to slot these guys. I'm more concerned with who are we identifying and where do they fit within the scheme of our program? And then, to both of your points, what the mixture of that portal class is then going to look like, kind of playing off of it. Because let's not forget, there was years where we were top 3 every year, but, it wasn't really cohesive to the plan of how you were building a program. It was because they were 5 stars. It was because somebody said that they should be ranked highly. And then they got to campus and now fans are disappointed, right? And so for me, I don't really care what the ranking is. I care more of like, what are the quality of the players and what is it that they're trying to build towards? And then what is just kind of that year kind of dictating, whether it's from the high school ranks or the portal. So yeah, I could not care less about a recruiting ranking. I just want to get solid guys that, have an ability to come and contribute.
I'll push back and disagree with you guys from this standpoint.
Okay.
I think the University of Texas should always have a top 10 recruiting class in football. If you're doing it the right way and you're winning enough games, you should have a top 10 recruiting class. Now, where that differs is, to your point, Marcus, not all top 10 classes, not all top 5 classes are created equal. Mm-hmm. Tom Herman had a class in 2018 that I think was ranked 3rd in the country. But why was that class ranked 3rd in the country? It was very skill player heavy. Wasn't a lot. I mean, yeah, Keandre Coburn was in that class. Moro Ojimo was in that class. Christian Jones ended up being an NFL player, but it was all wide receivers and DBs. Like that, especially now, you could have a top 3 class, but if it's all with skill players and there's no linemen, there's no quarterbacks, like to me, it doesn't matter. I think class ranking matters from that standpoint. But to me, CJ, and I've said this before, this is the point that I'll always make on recruiting. I think you've got to take care of your premium positions. You got to make sure you get quarterback, offensive tackle, and pass rusher. Those are the 3 things that you got to make sure you take care of in recruiting, because if you miss on them, yes, you can go get one in the portal, but you're going to end up spending so much money on the open market, it's going to take away from another area you can address. So to me, I think you've got to take care of those premium positions in high school recruiting.
Yeah.
The only thing I would add. My bad. Go ahead, CJ.
If you finish top 10, I think that's fantastic. Where, if it's top 5, top 6, right. If you're pushing for 2, 3, or 4, Texas will attract the talent. I don't disagree with that at all, Jeff. And Marcus, you pointed it out. You go out and you add Richard Wesley, the top linebacker in Georgia with Tyler Atkinson. If those top 10 guys on the board are looking like the top 10 guys that Texas has continued to recruit, I don't need number 11 to be right on the heels, right? I don't need number 15 to have a small gap between 10, right? Make sure that those top end guys in your class can and should make a difference, at least at some capacity on the field as freshmen. But in terms of filling up the remainder of that class that end up putting you in a top 7 conversation versus a top 4 or fighting for number 1, I think the days of needing that number 1 class to really lean on are gone. And that's why I think you're starting to see more and more of those developmental takes.
And also, just to be clear too, Jeff, like I 100% agree with you. Like if Texas is recruiting the way it should be, then yeah, you should have a top 10 class. Just to answer the question though, I just don't care what they're ranked, right? Like I don't care what the number next to Texas's class is by the end of the recruiting recruiting session, if you will. So I think we're all kind of saying a version of the same thing. It's just I think I've gotten to a point where whether it's, just having seen enough teams over time, having seen enough talent over time, having seen enough guys that are ranked highly and didn't live up to it, and guys that weren't, that, ended up outplaying those guys. Like, I understand it's something that, a lot of time and energy and, different equations and algorithms all kind of come together for people to put these rankings together. But, to your other point too, sometimes, Jeff, like some of those classes are bolstered in rankings just because they took volume. Like, I don't remember what the final number was, but how many guys did USC take, this past
35.
year? Like, you're not going to have, I don't want to see Texas taking 35 high school players at this point, where the game has gone to. So, if they're doing the right thing, the odds of you not being in the top 10 are pretty slim. But what that number looks like, as long as you're getting, the right guys for your needs, again, I couldn't care less what the number next to the Texas is.
I think you're right, Marcus. We're all of us are kind of saying the same thing. And I would say, don't get so hung up on the class ranking that you lose sight of the substance within that class. In other words, if you met all your needs and you're a more talented team, but you've got, the number 9 recruiting class, okay, it's great. If that board looks the way you want it to at the end of the cycle that it did, that you hoped it would at the start of the cycle, then that's all that matters. Nothing else really matters at that point. And then look, it's kind of like you're building college rosters like you're building NFL rosters. Like, you can't build a Super Bowl contender exclusively through the draft, but you can't build one exclusively through free agency either. You got to have a little bit of mix of all of it. CJ, that's the thing that I don't know. I don't know going forward what percentage is going to be what percentage of your roster, is going to have to be, homegrown recruits, what percentage is going to have to be portal guys, what percentage of those homegrown recruits have to be blue chip guys, or developmental guys that eventually come around. Like, and maybe there is no ideal number. Indiana kind of just proved that, but I don't know. That's the thing that I don't know what that equation is yet.
Yeah, because look, Indiana also laid the blueprint out of having a lot of experience and a lot of veteran ability, right? A lot of guys that are on that roster, they're very old that have played a lot of football. So the problem that Texas, Georgia, and Ohio State will always battle with against, kind of the teams like Indiana, look, your guys that are going to be NFL caliber guys, they're gone after 3 years more times than not. Texas saw that this year with Anthony Hill and Malik Muhammad. It was a fight to keep Trevor Goosby. It was a fight to keep Jelani McDonald. Indiana doesn't have an individual player of those four skill. You know what I mean? Like, at least not coming out of high school. They played 3 straight years. They're gone after 3 years. That's where you have to battle, and that's where you have to use the portal in large parts to balance the veteran age of your roster to make sure that, okay, you need a left guard. Well, your left guard could either be a second-year guy on campus who's played 60 snaps and mop-up duty, or you can go get somebody that's played 3.5 years of college ball, been in the weight room for 5, and now he's going to be a step-in guy that'll play a lot of snaps for you. So that's the juggle. And I think what's really interesting is when you deal with such high talent on the roster coming out of high school, showing them the path of, okay, after 3 years, we hope to keep you around, but also knowing that you have the chance to leave. I need to make sure that I have something ready to go right away to make sure my roster doesn't lose a large piece of its talent pool.
And while we're on recruiting, the only other thing I'll add, and I know what I'm going to ask of our OTF family here is not going to happen, right? I know that tomorrow morning this question is going to get asked. And every stream that we do between now and next Wednesday when we're back on, it's going to get asked. But please don't care about what team rankings are in May. And certainly when you look at our staff and what they've shown that they're going to do, if this is year, 6 for Sark, every year he is slow played a certain number of guys. He's taken time with evaluations and closed like gangbusters. I am not worried about what this program is going to do in high school recruiting. Where I would begin to be worried is if you start not having guys still have a high level of interest, right? But that's not the case. You still have everybody from every possible position that you could want saying something about Texas. And as long as that buzz is still continuing, as long as they're still coming to check out campus, as long as they're having these positive responses to what their recruitment is, then I think we're in good shape. And I tell my homeboys all the time, like, they'll ask me about recruiting and stuff, and I'm like, man, y'all wake me up in December. When we get to December, I'll have a real conversation about it. And obviously we're going to talk about it between now and then, but like any number of things are going to happen between now and the end of the summer, and then the season's going to tell a story as well. So
recruiting rankings right now are important for a program like UCLA, like a first-year head coach like Bob Chesney. Like, the fact that people are looking at like, oh man, UCLA's got a top 5 class. There must be something really good going on out there. Like a top 5 class for Sark right now, it would be okay, business as usual, right? But CJ, for a program like UCLA, like the fact that we're talking about UCLA football in a positive manner in May is really good for a first-year head coach there.
Yeah. And again, you never know. Okay, look, for folks who follow recruiting, this, but more times than not, schools will hold off public commitments until they need a string of manufactured momentum.
Texas
right?
Tech.
I think we saw it just the other day. Texas Tech, I mean, it hit the fan, if you will, right? When Brendan Swarsby's going under fire for all the stuff that's alleged with his gambling and everything that's going on there. And they said, hey, Sir Rod Baker, break glass in case of emergency. We needed some positive news today because the season's in flames. Our starting quarterback worth $6 million, probably not going to play a snap for us. We need some positive news. Commit to us, please. And there it is, right? So it's always interesting when and how teams approach needing momentum. And that's, again, how you get some of the, well, things are going really well right now because we just got 5 recruits in a weekend. And it's like, okay, well, now you got to go 3 months without getting a single one. Are things going dry? Or did the staff forget how to recruit? No, it's all based off of, what they need at a given time. And again, it's why you've seen Texas in June, July, and August really start to piece together runs after official visits because say, all right, let's get hot. The Texas heat is here. Let's get hot on the recruiting trail as well.
Yep. And, even as talented as Rod Baker is, you needed a hazmat crew to clean up the mess that was left with the Brennan Storesby news. But I digress. We won't talk about Texas Tech in that situation here on the show. Hey, we got one more sponsor to thank. Give a shout out to Laura Baker, to accomplished Austin realtor Laura Baker. Laura and the Andy Allen team at Keller Williams can handle all of your real estate needs in the Austin area. Laura is not only a diehard Longhorn fan, but a longtime Austin real estate expert. Give her a shout at 512-784-0505. That's 512-784-0505. And a big thank you to Laura Baker for sponsoring not only Football Theory here on the channel with myself and Rod Babers, but also sponsoring the Wednesday night live stream here at On Texas Football. All right, guys, let's get to just a couple of questions before we get out here. Yes, OU sucks says, hey guys, with the power running back room, do you think Sark will utilize screens and swing passes more, especially versus SEC defenses? This is where, guys, I hope we see more Hollywood Smothers involved than he was at NC State. I just felt they left a lot of meat on the bone with him in the pass game.
Well, to CJ's point earlier about that interview with, was it Dan Casey? Mm-hmm. Like, he went pretty in-depth about how he believes Sark has the best screen game in all of college football, right? And I think he might have even gone beyond that, just say in general. So I absolutely think that's exactly what you're going to see. You're going to see a ton of screen. And honestly, like, when you look at the guys that he's recruited, it would almost be, like malpractice if he doesn't. I mean, it's something that he likes to do anyways. And now that he actually has a complement of, players that are well suited for that, I would be shocked if you don't.
Mm-hmm.
CJ, Ryan Nelson asks, and Connor also asked both. Ryan Nelson asked, the Martian sales recruitment, is it Indiana versus Texas? Is IU getting more involved with big names in state? And then Connor just wants to know any update on sales with Chris Jackson making the visit there.
Yeah, look, Chris Jackson visited yesterday up in Indiana. Indiana, as far as I know, they've hosted sales the most of anybody in his recruitment. I think like 7 times by now he's been to campus, which going to Bloomington 7 times I think is pretty crazy. But hey, to each their own, right? Not much up there except Little 5, I believe. But no, I think Indiana's going to give a big run for their money. You just come off of it. A national championship, you have a first-round wide receiver, you have another drafted to the Jets. So ultimately, they're going to have a lot to pitch. They have a lot of NIL money, obviously waiting as well. But the visit went well. We'll have more for you on TexasFootball.com as well. I know Hank South has been all over this one. But right now, Texas right in the thick of things. And, I think Ohio State obviously will have something to say before all of this is said and done as well.
All right, that is going to do it for the Wednesday night live stream here at On Texas Football. CJ, Marcus, thank you guys for the knowledge, the intel, the expertise as always. Big thank you to Matthew behind the scenes, the MVP at On Texas Football, for producing the show and doing a great job as he always does. If you're not a member over at OnTexasFootball.com, you still got time to get over to the site and take advantage of our spring sale. When you get over there and sign up, just use the promo code OTFOG and become an OTFOG. That'll get you 1 year of access at OnTexasFootball.com for just $39.95. Make sure that you hit that like button before we're out of here. Make sure that you're subscribed to the On Texas Football YouTube channel and that you've got those notifications set so that way anytime we go live or drop a video, you're not missing any of our Longhorn coverage or breaking news. Want to thank everybody that participated in the chat tonight, especially everybody that dropped in those super chats. And a big thank you once again to our sponsors tonight, Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise, Laura Baker, Prize Picks, and Rogue Shop. If you got any questions, comments, whatever you got, you can direct it to the guys bright and early tomorrow morning at Coffee and Football. And I will actually be on the live stream tomorrow night. Actually on Friday, sitting in for Rod Babers with Bobby Burton. CJ will be back on the live stream tomorrow night with Rod and Coach. And then Marcus will be back in the house on Wednesday, next Wednesday. Marcus, I think you're also on Monday. Yes.
Monday mornings. Yeah. Monday mornings.
All right. So that's when you'll see us on the channel again, but we will be back next Wednesday here for the Wednesday night live stream. So until then, for Marcus, for CJ, for Matthew, for the entire On Texas Football staff, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And until next time,
Welcome for Craig.